Hey everybody, welcome to the In Case You Missed It Summer of 2022, where we're looking at 4 videos over the summer in July and August that we're revisiting because I think they're worthy of asking some of these questions again. And today I want us to look at our weekend gatherings, and I want us to look at 3 practical suggestions to reimagine what you might do in a weekend gathering and maybe an experiment that you might try at your church. So take a peek at this. So let's get really practical. The last 18 months has shifted the Sunday worship gathering significantly. The move online changed expectations and habits, and it created a brand new experience for churchgoers. And now, as people begin to make their way back to face-to-face gatherings, once again, there are some lessons that need to be learned. We simply can't go back to what we were doing. So let me prompt your conversation, whether you agree or whether you disagree. But in returning to face-to-face worship gatherings, I would, number 1, shorten the worship service. In my grandfather's day, the worship service was 60 minutes. It started at 11 a.m. to accommodate the farmers, and worshipers were starting to squirm about 11:59 if the organist hadn't slipped back onto their bench for the closing hymn. In my day, worship gatherings extended to 75 or 90 minutes. Sermons lengthened. Worship sets got longer. Multimedia components were added. And now in 2021, it would appear once again that there's a return to a shorter worship gathering, in large part as a result of the fully online experience of the past 18 months. Given that reality, I think churches will need to shorten their services. I think I'd experiment with 45 to 50 minutes. I'd experiment with less worship music during the typical gathering, maybe add another worship gathering during the month for those that would like increased worship. I'd experiment with shorter sermons, maybe 15 to 20 minutes, and then allow increased opportunity for questions and answers, or perhaps conversation around a table when the service has ended. And beyond that, in terms of the service, I'd be more committed to cleaning up some of the clutter that can find our way into our service and add perhaps more scripture reading and prayer. Is a 45-minute service realistic? Try shaping one and see what you uncover. Number 2, I would lengthen the connection and community building time. If your typical gathering pre-COVID was 75 to 90 minutes, I would continue with that time frame. But I would consider shaping a 45 to 50-minute worship gathering and then providing 30 to 40 minutes of intentionally shaped connection time. And I would try to make the entire time as unified as possible so that one flows seamlessly into the next and it doesn't feel like 2 separate chunks where one ends before the next one begins. The last 18 months reminded us of the deep desire for connection and community and for friendship. Very honestly, that's what I missed the most. It wasn't the sermon. What would it look like to create more space for human connection at every gathering? Would it be possible for some to remain around tables to interact regarding the sermon that they just heard? Could the service perhaps flow into a small group time for others rather than trying to carve out another time during the week for your small group? Could questions be provided for groups that would further engage the participants and engage discussion on what they just heard? Additionally, perhaps part of your facility could be renovated into an attractive and engaging environment where people could simply gather for conversation and coffee. Perhaps if the service was shortened and children were still involved in their children's program, they might be less likely to leave and stick around for a time of connection and community and coffee. And number 3, in returning to face-to-face gatherings, I would rearrange the space for greater connection. I just touched on that. Is it possible to reconfigure your auditorium, to reconfigure part of your space for tables and chairs and circles rather than only rows? If some people were or around tables, would that create a deeper sense of community and feel less like a performance venue focused on the stage? Would that type of gathering around tables provide for an environment where some might choose to remain and enter into conversation regarding the sermon when the service is over? Or simply, perhaps they would remain for conversation. Could it begin to reshape the DNA of your church culture? What would be required and what would it look like for you to reconfigure your space, both in your auditorium and in other parts of your facility, so that the environment communicates a commitment to community and relationship rather than stage performance and receiving content? What I want you to do is use these few ideas, add some of your own, and then have some energetic discussion where you kind of reimagine what your weekend worship gathering could look like. And here's a few questions that can help you.